Welcome to On the Bauble podcast episode 17. I'm your host, fabtcg Ueda, and with me is my co-host Yuki Lee Bender. This week's episode, we're going to be talking about all the notable cards that's been released in Dynasty and how they might affect the current classic constructed metagame. But before we go into all of that, how's your week this week? How was your week, Yuki?
Yeah, my week's been pretty good. We had a double draft armory on the Saturday, so we went and drafted twice, which was a lot of fun. I ended up 6-0ing the draft, which was nice. We did Arcane Rising and Tales of Aria, and I drafted a Lightning Briar deck using Veil Flash, and then I drafted a pretty standard boost dash deck, except I had Convection Amplifier and 3 Cadaverous Contrabands. So I could give the Cadaverous Contraband Dominate, and then I can use it to get back the Convection Amplifier and loop it. It goes back to the top of the deck. It's not a card draw, but it's still pretty good. You get a lot of reach. Sometimes you're just doing like 6 dominate, put it on top, boost a card, 6 dominate. They're just like, oh, I'm dead.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But other than that, what else? Continuing to play the team league. My team went 2-3 this week, unfortunately. So we lost that match to, is it Fab Chaos? They're the Greek team, but then they also have like Fab Chaos in their names. So I ended up winning my match against a Kano player. I think it's on Spark of Genius, or will be soon. But yeah, unfortunately, the team didn't quite get there.
Who did you play?
I played as Iyslander. So it was an Iyslander versus Kano match, which was, I think it's a fun matchup. It was perhaps not the closest looking game, but I also feel like Kano games don't look close very often.
Fair enough.
Like, they kind of blow you up or they don't.
Yeah. And sorry, you said you can watch this at Spark of Genius on their YouTube channel, I'm assuming?
I believe so. I definitely sent it into Eric, and he said he was going to do some commentary over it. I don't know exactly when it's going up, but yeah, keep an eye out for that one.
Okay, that's pretty sweet.
What about you, Jay?
For myself, I also went to the double draft with Yuki. I ended up going 5-1. I don't think we played each other, did we?
No, I don't think so.
I think it was a 10-person pod, then an 11-person pod?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it was still 3 rounds per draft, so we just ended up not getting paired up against each other. For my Tails draft, I drafted Briar. I was like a hybrid Earth Lightning Briar. I think I was heavier Earth. I had multiple Bramble Spark Reds and multiple Lightning Press Reds, so I got to really blow out my opponents just at instant speed, or just Bramble Spark being a very ridiculous card in that format.
Mm-hmm.
And in my Arc draft, I drafted Kano, and I went 2-1. I lost the Kano mirror because his deck was just significantly better than mine, and I went turn 1 Kano and then said, okay, I keep it on top, pass. And then they just, on turn 2, went Reverberate into Blazing Aether and just put me to 1 on turn 2. So that game ended very quickly.
Yeah. Just like in CC, in Blitz, or Limited, the Kano mirror can be pretty explosive.
Yeah, they could. It's whoever does the bigger damage first wins, and I didn't have that. We both didn't have that many AB, so when I whiffed on my Kano top check, I'm just like, oh, I lose this game. I see.
Yeah, if you don't have much AB, some of the hit effects like the Blazing Aether and stuff can get pretty out of control.
But Blazing Aether is an M, so you have to.
Or sorry, not Blazing. The other Aether card. They're all Aether. Aether Flare.
Aether Flare?
Okay, anyways. The one that costs 1 and does 3 at red and says your next spell that deals arcane damage deals X more, where X is the damage.
Aether Flare, yes, Aether Flare.
Yeah.
No. My opponent.
The card's very good if you don't have AB.
No, my opponent Blazing Aether me, which is the mythic that for every damage you do,
very good.
They just blew me up.
Sounds like you got outplayed.
I did. I got massively outplayed. Well, enough about whatever this format is called, Arcane Rising. Let's jump right into our current set, which is Dynasty.
Yeah, so one idea I kind of want to talk about before we kind of talk about like what all the decks got and like how that might affect the metagame is this idea. And I actually wrote about this on an article in fabtcg. I can link it. I believe it's called Dynasty First Impressions or something like that. Um, but anyways, essentially like one of the points of that article and one point that I think is really important when considering the format is that if you consider the world's metagame, which was probably like Briar, Fi, Oldham, Iyslander, none of those decks really got any meaningful support in this set. The Guardian cards are like quite strange and I think just quite bad. They're like all shield focused and like super defensive, and the D reacts like kind of okay on rate, but it blocks for 10 or something, which is just like I don't know, maybe in the Guardian Mirror, but super narrow. Similarly, like all the ninja stuff is kind of tailored more towards Katsu, and all the wizard stuff is like kind of direct upgrades for Kano, and we can go into detail about those later, but they're not really cards that are going to fit into Iyslander. And the ninja cards are not going to fit into Fi, and the Runeblade cards like seem also not fantastic and more tailored for Viserai. So I think all the best decks are going to remain pretty static in terms of how powerful they are and how they're built. I don't expect it to change too much besides maybe adapting a bit to the meta. And it's really going to be about if all the other classes got enough upgrades to be kind of like tipped from maybe that like tier 2 or 1.5 up to tier 1 deck.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people feel that way with Dynasty. All of their current decks didn't really get any upgrades, but maybe a lot of their pet decks, or a lot of the people with their these people who love Dash, like they got a lot of stuff, and the brute players got a bunch of stuff too.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it's kind of a sweet set. I don't think every set, everything needs to get more and more and more powerful, because that you kind of introduce power creep then. If you just kind of like are boosting up the weaker decks and giving them new tools, that actually seems like a pretty good, from like a balance perspective, it seems like a pretty good place to be.
Yeah, that seems fair. Do you want to just jump into just the cards right away?
Yeah, so we can kind of go class by class and give you an impression of what they got, a few cards we're excited about, and if we think it's good enough to change anything.
Okay, so the first class we want to talk about is Brute. I think the main cards are the mythics in this class. So the main cards I want to talk about the first card I want to talk about would be Savage Beatdown. So this card is a 3 cost at red, and it says play Savage Beatdown only if you discarded a card with 6 or more power this turn. As an additional cost to play Savage Beatdown, discard a random card. If the discarded card has 6 or more power, Savage Beatdown has +6. This card is just insane in rate, is I think the only thing I have to say about this. This card is still a little bit hard to play, but on the games you do get to play this card, you're probably just going to win, because a 3 for 12 is pretty ridiculous. And if you're in Reinhardt, it also means you've already intimidated once with his ability, and when you get to when you discard a random card, and it has to be 6 for it to be really broken. So when that happens again, that means you intimidate a second time. So this card swings for 12 when your opponent can only block with 2 cards in hand. And this isn't including anything like Blood Rush Bellow, where that card gives +2 on its own as well. What do you think about this card, Yuki?
Yeah, I agree. It's going to push the ceiling, and it's really good. I think in particular for pushing that kind of unblockable damage, I think is where it's going to be very solid and really shine. The efficiency on it is pretty good, but keep in mind that you do have to discard a card. So even if we forget about the first one, you discard a card, you pitch a card, you play this card. There's 3 cards for 12, which is definitely above rate. But if you consider like Thunderquake is like a 3-card 10, it's like about 2 cards above rate, which is solid, or it's comparable to like 4 for 0 go agains, like multiple of those, which are kind of premium. So it's definitely a little bit above rate, but the ask is pretty big. So It's going to depend how easy that is to put together, but I do think that there's some tools with Blood Rush Bellows and one of the other new cards, Madcap Charger.
Yeah, you just want to go straight into that card then, Madcap Charger?
Yeah, so this is just a 5 power 1 cost attack that blocks for 3. As an additional cost, you have to discard a card, and then if it's 6 or more, it gets go again. So Madcap Charger, I think, is just a really efficient way to trigger that discard without costing too much, and also getting go again, which sometimes Brute can struggle with. Like a lot of the Wild Ride and stuff and pulping are tied to a you needing to actually, like, what am I trying to say?
I'm not sure. What are you trying to say?
Pulping and Wild Ride cause you to draw and random discard, so there's a little bit of extra variance to those cards. And also, if you consider like a lot of Brute's resource space is yellow, it's just kind of like easy to pay for the curve of you pitch a yellow, you Madcap Charger, then you pitch another yellow, and you can Savage Beatdown. Because otherwise, you're like having to hold a blue and not randomly discard it because most of your blues are misses. And if you discard your blue, you still can't play Savage Beatdown. So I think there's like a little bit of awkwardness with that card. I guess with like a Tunic, you could do like 2 yellow pitches and a Tunic, but I do think it's hard to get off, and the 1 cost discards are probably the best outlets, or Blood Rush Bellow.
Can you actually do this play though? Because you discard 2 random cards, you need a pitch, and you play Madcap Charger.
You need 1 in Arsenal.
Oh, I see. So you need 1 Savage Beatdown or Madcap Charger in Arsenal.
Yeah. So it's a 5-card hand that comes in for 12.
5 and 12.
Or sorry, yeah, 5 and 12, so 17. So it's not bad.
Fair enough. I guess if you just have a Tunic, it could be a 4-card hand, no?
Potentially, yeah. If you pitch it off a blue.
It's pretty good.
It's a pretty good 4-card hand, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next card, Skullcrack. So Skullcrack is honestly, this card is just ridiculous. It's a red pitch that costs 2, and it says when Skullcrack is discarded at random, you gain a resource. Oh, and it attacks for 6 and blocks for 3. So this is a card that you just want to discard through your cost, Blood Rush Bellow, Savage Beatdown, Madcap Charger, all those random discard. If you get to randomly discard this card, it generates you a resource, and that's pretty ridiculous, mostly for Blood Rush Bellow.
Or even for the line we're talking about, you could Madcap Charger, discarding a Skullcrack, get a resource, and then your blue, then you'll still have 3 floating for Savage Beatdown. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
you do need to win the 50-50, but...
Yeah. As I was going to say, like, it's a little bit awkward because you still need to win that 50-50. But actually, even if you don't win that 50-50 and discard the Savage Beatdown, you still have 2 floating, so you can actually just play Skullcrack. It just costs 2.
Yeah, and then Arsenal. Or you could also have like a Tunic up and bail yourself out that way.
But I think like the main power of this card just comes with when you're random discard, and this is the only card you can discard, then you just guaranteed to get that resource, mostly with like Blood Rush Bellow. If you just go a block with 1 card in your hand, you have 3 cards left, you pitch your resource card, play Blood Rush Bellow, the 1 card left in your hand is Skullcrack, so you discard that, you generate the resource, you get the Intimidate trigger, so you go back up 1 resource, so Blood Rush Bellow essentially costs 3, and then you get to draw 2 more cards and really pop off with Mandible Claws on that turn.
Yeah, definitely really good. And you can also do some kind of sweet stuff like pulping. You have to hit it off the top, but if you hit this off the top on like a 2-card hand with pulping, then you can just swing club or claw afterwards, which is like pretty solid value.
Another card would be Berserk. This card's really interesting. So Berserk is a yellow pitch that costs 1, and it says until end of turn, whenever you discard a random card with 6 or more power, banish it. If you do, reveal the top card of your deck. If it has 6 or more power, draw a card. And it's go again. And sorry, I forgot to mention it. This is just a brute action. It's not an attack. That also blocks for 3. I don't even know how to just start explaining this card. This is just like a solid combo card, right?
It is. I think its floor is pretty low, and I think it asks quite a bit of you, and it's also not the most consistent, but it obviously has a very high ceiling. Maybe that's good enough. I'm not sure. It blocking 3 and being a yellow is nice, but so if you discard one card, you've paid one for Berserk, and then you have a chance to replace Berserk. So that's not a very good deal. So you need to be discarding two cards to get value out of Berserk. And you also need to hit a 6 on top. And if you don't hit a 6 on top, that card actually just stays there. So you brick your Berserk value for the entire turn. So I'm not sure. I've seen this card do powerful things. It's really a matter of like, is it consistent enough, or does it just like brick you and not do anything too often for it to be really worth it? And I'm not entirely sure. Where this card does get a lot better is with Blood Rush Bellow, because you go up in cards already, and then you might have like another way to discard and keep going. So pretty good with Blood Rush Bellow, but outside of that, it's a little bit awkward.
You know what's really awkward about this card is that Berserk actually doesn't stack. Just a little rules tip with Berserk. Even if you have played 2 Berserks, you actually don't get to try and draw 2 cards each time you discard, because the card requires you to banish the card you discarded at random to be able to look at the top card of your deck. So if you have 2 Berserks, once the first one resolves and you banish the card and you look at the top, even if you get, like, let's say it's a 6 and you draw the card, the second Berserk trigger actually can't resolve, because you can't actually banish that same card again because it's already in your banish zone. So this card doesn't work in multiples, which is also a little bit awkward. Do you think this will be a sick one-of in the deck?
Maybe there's like some weird pitch stack scenarios where you can sideboard this and pitch stack an endgame, but
Ooh, that's interesting against like fatigue decks.
Yeah, maybe that's something you can do with this card, just to have like a Blood Rush Berserk turn and then pitch some 6s so that you know that you're going to hit.
Oh, that's sick. I didn't even think about that, but that's pretty sick.
Yeah, I actually just thought of it. It being a yellow does kind of facilitate that, because Brute operates okay off yellow. So maybe this is better or best as a pitch stack end game, and you can just sideboard it out perhaps in other games. Other
Yeah,
matchups.
like the Sting of Sorcery in the Briar meta against Oldham. Like the only way you won that match was like pitch stacking ball into Sting of Sorcery. You're thinking like maybe Berserk is something like you try and pitch stack. You pitch stack Blood Rush Bellow and Berserk together with, and then pile a bunch of six power cards right after it, so then you can have like an insane turn with Blood Rush Bellow with Go again. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. I think Brute is one of the more interesting classes to me, and I think Brute was already pretty close. We had Clay and Ian, both top 8 Canadian nationals. I think it won Malaysian Nats as well. And on the Weekend of Worlds, Chandler Toe won the calling on Brute, on Reinhardt specifically. So I think Reinhardt's been like solid and can win events, but maybe not quite as powerful or consistent as the top tier decks. But I think they got a lot of tools, and it wouldn't surprise me if Reinhardt is sort of like on par with some of those top tier decks. I don't know that he's going to be like broken or anything. He doesn't strike me as that strong, but I think he might be able to be like pretty competitive, which is cool.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see Reinhardt in ProQuest season now, because probably is powerful enough to be there.
Yeah, definitely expected to have a pretty good showing in ProQuest season.
Okay, let's move on to the next class. Let's talk about Mech next, because they got a very powerful card in this set called Pulse Wave Harpoon. Pulse Wave Harpoon is a red pitch that costs 1, and it's a mech attack that attacks for 4, blocks for 3. And it reads, when this attacks a hero, they reveal X cards from their hand, where X is the number of times you've boosted this combat chain. Choose an attack action card with a shield less than or equal to X, then add it to this chain link as a defending card. And this card also has boost. So that was a lot of text. Just kind of abbreviated a little bit so it's easier to understand. So when you attack with Pulse Wave Harpoon and boost it, and this is like your 3rd card you've boosted this turn, you get to look at your opponent's hand and basically pick any card from their hand and force to block Pulse Wave Harpoon. This does very similar things to Surgical Extraction that Arachne gets to play, but this just doesn't even have to hit.
Yeah, it's a little bit worse in terms of value because they still get the block out of the card. However, it not needing to hit means it's very reliable disruption. And I think third chain link is the magic number. Two chain links gets a little bit sketchy. Even if decks do have two blocks in them, keep in mind they only have to reveal two of their cards. So if they haven't really blocked yet, there's a very good chance that they have some three blocks that they can hold on to. That being said, if they've blocked because they want to get value out of their three blocks, and then you, like, maybe they block the first attack and then you, well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe there's a way to get them, but it's tough.
Yeah, well, yeah. If they've already blocked with one card in their hand, they only have three cards left. You pulse wave harpoon on the second attack. That's you get to look at two cards
Yeah,
and rip a two shield card. But was it called shield in this game? What is it called? Block value?
defense
Defense? Okay, yeah.
or
Like if you
block.
get
Yeah.
yeah, like this card is a little bit awkward if you are doing it on the second or first. Just because they get to just show you cards that you can't actually rip, and that's that. Like you just don't get to rip it.
What's kind of interesting about this is because it comes at the end of the chain, you're kind of, because this card exists, you're always asking your opponent to say, like, do I play around Pulse Wave Harpoon coming and ripping a card out of my hand, or do I not do that and just eat early damage? Like I don't know, it messes with everything. If you want to block with two cards on their first two attacks and then they Pulse Wave Harpoon and you're playing like Iyslander and they take your Wounded Bull, you're going to be really sad. But it's kind of like hard to play around that also. Like, do you keep four cards to play around that? Then you can't really use your hand. Like, it's kind of awkward. You want to talk about BIOS update?
Yeah. So BIOS update is a mechanologist action that is a red pitch that costs 0, and it blocks for 3. And it reads: the next attack action card you boost this turn gains 3 power. The next time a mech item with cost 2 or less is banished to pay a boost cost this turn, put it into the arena, and it has go again. This card's busted, right? Like you just get to cheat a 2 cost for free. Obviously, it isn't guaranteed that you get it, but if you banish 3 cards off the top of your deck because you boosted 3 times that turn, well, I don't know what the odds are. I guess it depends on how many items you're playing in that list, right?
Yeah, I think when it hits, it's going to be really powerful, but I think the math on it is a little bit, I'm not sure it's great. The most common items are Teklo Core and Teklo Pounder. So if you could run 3 of each of those pretty easily since they're blues, and you'd then have 6 hits. So like a 10% chance per, but it's still not great. Like, you're still hitting.
Well, it's not. It's a little better than 10%. If
Actually, you
you
take
have,
one out, so it's 5. It's 5 and
well, it because like this is where the math gets a lot complicated, right? Because the fact that you're already playing BIOS update, that's a card out of the deck, and then the card you're playing that has boost is also not the item card. So you're minimum taking away 2 cards from the deck.
it's true.
Like,
It's true. But you also only have the 5 hits. I don't think it's going to be great. I'd imagine it's like 30, sub 30%.
do you don't think Hyperdriver Red makes into these decks at any point?
Maybe. So Hyperdriver Red is not a card that typically makes boost dashless.
Hmm.
That being said, Nitro Mechanoid does care about, we can talk about that next, but Nitro Mechanoid does care about hyperdrivers. So I could see this in the hyperdriver Nitro Mechanoid deck where you're way more likely to get value out of this card. And then you can it helps you set up your Nitro Mechanoid, which seems kind of sweet.
I think that's a good segue to just move into Nitro Mechanoid.
Yeah, maybe before we do, I'll just say that, like, BIOS update seems a little bit high variance. They have cards like Locked and Loaded, or there's another one from Everfest as well that gives you some other marginal effect, and it's a 3 for 0 that blocks 3. And Mech doesn't usually play those cards. They kind of want the boost and the chain links. So you are making a bit of sacrifice to play this. It's like technically a little bit below rate for Mech. That being said, the upside's really, really huge. So this card might just be good enough. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it might be the case of like the times you hit off of BIOS update, you just win the game. So just like 0 cost plus 3 that just sometimes reads win the game is good enough.
Yeah, because it's not, even if it's a little below rate, it's not a disaster. So it's like still fine.
Okay, well let's move on to Construct Nitro Mechanoid. Construct Nitro Mechanoid is a yellow pitch that costs 4, and it is a mech action construct, and construct's a new typing from Dynasty. And this card blocks for 3. And it reads transform target mechanologist head, chest, arm, legs, weapon, and 3 hyperdrivers you control into Nitro Mechanoid. If you don't, negate this. Go again. So negate this typically just means that this card gets countered and it actually doesn't resolve. The only part I'm not sure about is if you get go again or not if the card gets negated. I'm not exactly sure on this yet.
I don't think so, because go again is part of the resolution of the card. It's just like, I imagine it's just like Spectra, how like attacks don't resolve go again when you hit a Spectra.
But this card, negate typically means you negate the whole card.
Yeah, exactly.
Know. So if this card gets negated, you won't be able to resolve. Yeah,
you shouldn't be able to resolve go again. It's part of the card's text, just like for attacks.
The only other thing is like I don't know if negate this is referring to this ability or if this card.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, either way, this card is a double face card, and the other side is called Nitro Mechanoid, and it's this card's really just like this card's really good if you just look at this side. And it just says action, banish a card from under Nitro Mechanoid, attack. And then it has overpowered, which is a new keyword that says the defending hero can't defend Nitro Mechanoid with more than 1 action card. This doesn't include defense reactions or armor. It's 1 action card. And then it also has temper. And this card is a mech weapon equipment that's an item. And it hits for 5 and blocks for 5. There's a lot of things I just said there. If you're on YouTube, the image of the card is going to be there. If you're listening on Spotify or any other podcast streaming website, you might want to just Google this card and look it up.
I can give a bit of a summary of what it does. So basically, you need to all your equipment needs to be mechanologist. You can transform it and 3 hyperdrivers into the other side for the cost of 4 resources in this card. So it's a major setup because you need to figure out how you're getting the 3 hyperdrivers. You have to play specific equipment for this to work. And on top of all of that, you also have to spend 4 resources and a card. That being said, when you do, the 5/5 side is really powerful. If you factor in the block value, that's like, I believe it's like 15 block and a free 5 attack weapon that is repeatable. You can use it multiple times per turn if you get action points off of like high octane is very good.
Whoa. Wait, what?
It's not a once per turn action. So if you have like 3 action points with high octane, you just got to go 5/5/5.
Holy, that's sick. I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah. I think if you win this, if you get to resolve this card and you're not just dead, which it does help you do because it has 5 armor and it can block repeatedly, I think it's really powerful. So it's going to be a matter of like how consistently you can assemble that and how good the rest of the deck is.
Yeah, well, it hits for 6, right? Because the arm piece you have to play is Galvanic Bender, which is a mech equipment arm piece that has material, which is a new keyword, I think. Or I guess
no, the ash is also material. Yeah.
Yeah, but this says while this is under a permanent, that permanent has +1 power. So Nitro Mechanoid hits for 6 each time because you don't have to detach this one, right? You can just detach the hyperdrivers first and all of the other equipment first.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So this card is really cool. I'm honestly pretty excited for it. I don't know if this is easy enough to pull off. Like it's a very big cost, so it might not be competitive, but it's really sweet and it makes you want to do it, which I think is like a good design space to have. I think it appeals to a lot more than just like your competitive player. And its power level is like right at the perfect spot where it's really good. Like there's a really very real payoff for resolving this card. It's just like on that border of like maybe it's good enough, but it might not be.
That makes me want to try it. Oh, but you have to play the mech headpiece which was like SK2, I think it's called. Don't exactly
MK2, yeah.
MK2. Yeah,
Visiertronic MK2.
I don't exactly remember what it does other than it has Arcane Barrier 2, but
Yeah, you can. Well, never mind. It has an ability where you can destroy it, and every time you boost, you draw a card and put a card on top of your deck, which is kind of cool with like BIOS update. The problem is if you destroy Visiertronic, you can't resolve Nitro Mechanoid. So I guess if that is your plan, you are not using that mode of the headpiece.
ugh. The cost on this card is so high.
It is. It is. And it might not be good enough, but if it is, it's going to be sweet.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next hero or the next class. The next one we're going to talk about is Ranger, and we're going to talk about Heatseeker first. So, Heatseeker is a red pitch that costs 1, and it is a Ranger action arrow attack that attacks for 5, blocks for 3. And it says, when this hits at the beginning of your end phase, put the top card of your deck face up into your arsenal. You're the iconic Ranger player. What do you think about these cards?
I think Heatseeker is really good. It's kind of like a Snatch, or maybe it's like a Take the Tempo that can't really miss. So I think it's really, really good. Ranger typically wants to have an arsenal, and it lets you kind of extend your whole hand and still threaten to have an arsenal if your opponent doesn't want to block you, which is really good. Azalea sort of has like the cheat code of being able to use her hero ability to put something on the bottom and then take a card off the top if she doesn't like what gets stuck in her arsenal. So it's nice to have that sort of like backup plan. And Lexi generally has all of her cards playable from Arsenal, and also because it goes up, it plays nicely with your
New Horizons?
With your New Horizons. Yeah. And I could even see just like if you're holding an arrow and you hit an arrow, it might just be worth the arsenal both of them and then just pop your snaps, and that's like a 4 arrow turn, and that's probably fine.
Sounds pretty good. Just moving on.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to say about Heatseeker. I don't think it makes a new archetype or anything. It's just like a very solid staple that I think basically every Ranger is going to play, and it makes the deck a little more powerful. And I don't think it asks very much of you. You just put it in. It's a really good attack.
Yeah, that sounds fair. This card looks real good. The next one we're going to talk about is Immobilizing Shot. That is a red pitch, costs 0. Again, it's a Ranger action arrow attack. This one hits for 4, blocks for 3. And it says, if Immobilizing Shot has an aim counter, it has when this hits a hero, they can't play more than 1 action card and 1 non-attack action card during their next action phase. This card's pretty sweet too, but do you think this card's actually good?
I kind of doubt it. It does require you to play the Sandscour Greatbow setup to get the aim counters, most likely, because the other ways to get them, like Point the Tip and the Blessing, just aren't really doing it for me. And this card has a blank text swap because it's just a vanilla 4 for 0 arrow if you don't have the aim counter, which is pretty mopey. And then even if you do pull it off, I think it's actually really, really narrow. It's very good against Fi specifically.
That's still pretty good. Like Fi is a really popular deck right now.
Yeah, but I think it kind of stops there. Like Viscera can still Mauve, Shrill, Rosetta you, and Briar can still do something like Nimblism, Rabble, Rosetta, which is still pretty painful. Or can like Channel Mount Heroic 7 attack you Arsenal something, and they're just like, okay, this is fine. So I don't know. It's okay. You probably play some copies in the sideboard if you're playing the Sandscour Greatbow. I kind of mentioned this also in my article. I don't know if Sandscour Greatbow is quite good enough. It's hard to compete with Death Dealer, but maybe.
Fair enough. And let's talk about Drill Shot next. The Drill Shot for the red one, this is a rare, so there's actually 3 different colors, red, yellow, and blue. This one costs 0, attacks for 4 for the red one, and it is an arrow attack that blocks for 3. And it says, if Drill Shot has an aim counter, it has Piercing 1. Piercing 1 is a new keyword that says, if it is defended by an equipment, it gets +1 power. And it has the ability, when it hits a hero, put a -1 counter on an equipment they control.
Yeah, so this card, the way I would think of it is it's kind of adjacent to Searing Shot, which is a 4 for 0, and on hit they lose a life, and that's pretty much a Ranger staple because it's slightly above rate. Drill Shot, I suppose there's endgame scenarios where it will be worse than Searing Shot, but in the early game, the -1 counter on equipment is pretty good, and the breakpoint of 4 is like really annoying. Like if your opponent's too hard blocking this, you're pretty happy, and even without the aim counter text, like if you kind of force them to use their equipment, that's really, really good, especially in a class that has so many on hits like Ranger does. So I think this is going to kind of pressure their equipment and potentially take away a few key armor blocks that could otherwise be used to stop like a big dominated attack, or I don't know, easily block out some of your like disruptive turns and just kind of keep going. You kind of take that option away. So I think it's actually really good.
You think this is going to be a staple in all the Rangers, including Lexi?
I think so. I could see matchups where it's not super relevant because not all classes have access to great armor, but I think that against the decks that do, it seems really, really solid. It also kills Rampart if you ever can get a -1 counter on Rampart, which is pretty good. So
I don't think they will let you, right?
yeah, they might just play. They might play Stalagmite.
Oh, I see. Against Ranger.
It's possible. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other cards you want to talk about in Ranger?
Not really. We kind of talked about Deadeye. I think a lot of it's kind of wrapped up. I see Drill Shot and Heatseeker being solid staples for every Ranger, and I see the other cards as being really tied to aim counters. The problem with a lot of the other aim counter payoffs is like a mobilizing shot, it's just a blank card when you don't hit it, and you don't hit it all the time. So the payoff needs to be really, really good, and it kind of like builds in inconsistency into your deck. And I'm just not sure that like a mobilizing shot or long shot, which is like a 5 for 0 if you have an 8 counter, but it's a 3 for 0 otherwise, like I just don't think it's good enough. Hemorrhage Bore, the like Command and Conquer style arrow, is interesting, but again, I feel like you're just kind of like short another really good payoff of this being good. That being said, I'm kind of curious if we see more aim counters in the future from Ranger, because as that package grows in size and maybe there's like equipment that cares about aim counters or other cards that care about aim counters or like other ways to get it, this package could get more and more interesting. So I think there's like some cool tools here. I just wonder if they'll get future support or if this is kind of like it. And
like, I don't play that much Ranger, but like from my point of view, I feel like if this archetype gets a little bit too much support, it's gonna be a problem, because Deadeye really can become a problem very quickly. That card is too efficient if all of your cards always has an aim counter.
I don't know if all your cards need to always have an aim counter, but I think that the deck needs a few more payoffs to incentivize it for doing it, because Sandscour Greatbow is giving up like Death Dealer is a card draw every single turn, and Sandscour Greatbow is only going to be a card draw like every so often. Maybe like half the time it's going to be an arrow that you want to hit, because sometimes you'll hit like a yellow or something and it's not great. And I think because of that, it's just sort of, it's fine but not great. Even Deadeye, like you really kind of need a card in Arsenal so that you can Azalea, and then you need a card to pitch, and you need Deadeye, so it's like already a 4-card hand because you want to get Dominate, and then you're going 8 Dominate, and like, yeah, you disrupt them and you get the discard effect, but for a 4-card hand, like the value on it is okay.
Okay, then let's move on to the next one, which I want to talk about, which is Wizard. The Wizard card I want to talk about here would be Brainstorm. Brainstorm is a blue pitch 3 cost. It is a Wizard instant, and it reads, until end of turn, your hero gets, whenever you draw a card this action phase, deal 1 damage to any target. This card generated a whole new deck for Wizard. Just like there is something called the Brainstorm OTK deck, and that deck looked really sweet, honestly. I looked at the list and it plays all of these god-awful cards and it just tries to OTK you on like turn 3. I don't know how consistent this deck is right now, but it's definitely worth looking into. And if there are some people in your local meta that really likes these kinds of like combo decks, they might be playing it, and you might have to respect it even a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. They can do stuff like play Potions of Luck. I think a lot of them are playing the Crown of Dominion with cash in so that you can draw 2 cards. and kind of like go with go again and go up in size. So you could like draw 2 cards, then tome to draw more cards, and then you start to get it to use your like potions of luck and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. I've also seen ones that run Hope Merchant's Head, so a couple options there.
I don't have anything else I want to talk about Rainstorm. What's the other cards you want to talk about? Is it Sap and how do I pronounce this card?
So I'll talk about Sap and Prognosticate. They're both 0 cost, 3 power spells for wizard that come in red, yellow, and blue. And notably, the blue are 0 cost, 1 damage spells, which is very, very good for the Kano Aether Wildfire combo deck that a lot of people have been playing. Sort of like the main way Kano has been played. Just having more 0 cost gives you extra ways to go off, because you don't really care if it's a 0 for 1 or a 1 for 2 when the main point is that it's buffing up your Aether Wildfire. And especially because you have Metacarpus nodes, so you can always sink resources in to get more power. Usually the problem is just being like a resource short of being able to play all your cards, and or like being a resource short of buffing your Aether Wildfire, which then buffs all your other spells for 1 anyways. So kind of like very resource starved, and having more 0 costs, I think, makes the deck quite a bit better. So it's kind of like one angle. It's not exciting, but I do think it's a pretty decent upgrade. The other one is just Kano got all of these Surge spells. So they got these ones. Surge is basically a new keyword that says if the card does, we'll have Surge X, and if the card does X damage, where X is usually equal to the amount of damage that the card does, or the Surge value on it, you get some kind of minor effect. So, for example, Prognosticate at blue is a 0 for 1, and it has Surge 1, and if you deal more than 1 damage, so more than its base, you get to opt 1. And they all kind of have these like marginal effects. The opt 1 could be a pretty good effect when you're comboing off, and this is Aether Wildfired. Basically, these are all just like cards Kano already has in plays, like Scalding Rain, like Voltic Bolt. You can just run Aether Quickening and Swell Tidings now, which give you some pretty decent upside. And yeah, they're just strictly better copies of cards Kano's already playing. So I think Kano got maybe the most upgrades of any class, actually.
Yeah, it's just a strict upgrade, right? Like, it just, the cards that they play right now, it just doesn't have Surge. So even if you can't trigger Surge, these versions of the cards are just strictly better because it has extra text on it.
Yeah, and I think even though it's just like, yeah, like the 0 costs make it a little bit more consistent, the surges make it so that, like, you know, you play Swell Tidings, you Crucible it, you come in for 6. If they don't stop at least 1, now you get a Ponder token and you get a draw a card and arsenal that card, and that's like, it's like a little bit of extra value. You can Aether Quickening and threaten to get the go again, and I think like all of this stuff kind of adds up, especially against the aggro decks that don't really want to block your damage. And when you have that on top of the consistency with the combo, I think Kano does get better. Does it make him tier 1? I'm not sure about that, but I think it's pretty interesting. He also has Blessing of Aether. Maybe we should talk about that card, because I think it's one of the only blessings that's actually potentially pretty good.
So Blessing of Aether is a red pitch that costs 1. It's a wizard action aura, and actually all the blessings are auras. There's a bunch of different blessings for a lot of the different classes in the set, and this one reads, at the start of your turn, destroy Blessing of Aether. Then, if the next card you play this turn has an arcane damage effect, instead it deals damage. Arcane damage plus 3. So the red one does 3, yellow one will plus 2, and the blue one will plus 1.
I just think this is pretty solid. Kano really cares about doing lots of damage on one turn, and if you can buff up something like a Sonic Boom or one of these Surge cards, you could just put it out of range of what they can reasonably block. Fork Lightning could even be an option with this, because now you have, at least in CC, you have stir the Aether Wind and this as options. And if you line all of that up, if you play this and then you stir and you Crucible, you're looking at, what is that, like a +7 to your fork? So that's just like 18 damage
that's gross.
off not that many cards. So I just think that there's like some, I don't know if it's better than doing what Kano's already doing, but it's certainly interesting. And another thing that's kind of cool is like you can play a one of these and just tutor it off Lesson in Lava. And some spots where you like don't really like you have like a blue and one resource floating because you lessened for 4. You can just be like, oh, I'm just gonna get this and set up and then arsenal something or whatever.
It gives that extra angle.
Yeah, like you could just play. I'm pretty sure you'll play at least a one of in the board for like matchups where you want access to this effect.
Yeah, where you want to go over the top.
Yeah, because like sometimes your lesson in lava is like a crazy combo piece where you go get another lesson, then you get a blazing and Aether and you blow them up. But sometimes you just don't have that much gas and you just kind of want to set up for your next turn instead.
Okay. The next couple of classes didn't really get much stuff, but we'll quickly go over them. First one we'll talk about Ninja. Ninja got a new like what how do you want to call this? Like these crouching tiger stuff.
I guess it's like a new mechanic.
Yeah, new mechanic. Okay, so crouching tiger is it's not a token, but
It is a
it's
token.
no, it's not.
Oh, you're right. It's not because you can put it in your deck.
Yeah, you can just have it in your deck. It's like Phoenix Flame. It's just but Phoenix Flame is a token. This one is actually not a token, which is really funny.
It's essentially a token.
Yeah, this is gonna cause a lot of like random deck list issues in tournaments for the first couple of times because how many you're supposed to put it in your deck box, what sleeves you're gonna use, what sleeves you have to use. Yeah, it's gonna be like a logistic nightmare. They're gonna have to make a exception rule for this card.
Yeah.
Either way, this card is a Crouching Tiger. This card does not pitch, and it costs 0, and has it is a ninja action attack that attacks for 0, and it has the ability. I don't know how to pronounce this.
Ephemeral.
Ephemeral. Okay. And that just means that if Crouching Tiger will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, instead it ceases to exist. So it just disappears. And it has go again.
Yeah. So one obvious use for this is that because it is a 0 cost, if you get one of the cards that puts this into your hand, as Katsu, you can discard the Crouching Tiger and then go tutor a combo piece. So
Oh, that's what it's for. Oh, okay.
yeah, so I think you can potentially like there's a couple cards that are kind of like standalone okay, and you can just play them and then it gives you a tutor for a combo piece and like that's kind of sweet. So I see that as being like pretty okay. But the other main thing this is doing is interacting with the other cards that care about Crouching Tigers. So there's some combo lines that let you go very very wide. There's a couple other cards that generate them, and there's a card that buffs all of them by 1, and you can combine that with like Art of War.
Oh, what I just realized, but a lot of these cards that make Crouching Tiger, the ones that are in common only actually generate them in your banish zone, so they actually don't go into your hand.
Yeah, so not all of them go to your hand, but I believe
The mythic one, it's a Mind State of the Tiger creates them into your hand. So does Roar of the Tiger. They're both ninja actions. And Roar of the Tiger just reads create a crouching tiger in your hand, and then Crouching Tigers you control gets +1 this turn. Go again. That's not that good. Doesn't actually generate you a card.
okay, I was thinking that Flex Clause, it's basically a leg tap before 1 go again 2 block, and it has on hit create a Crouching Tiger in your banish zone and you can play it. For some reason I thought that went to your hand.
Yeah, and the other one that creates it at your hand is a Mind State of Tiger, and this one is a 0 cost that blocks for 3, that pitches for blue, and it says at the start of your turn, destroy Mind State of the Tiger, create a Crouching Tiger in your hand, and it's just an aura. So this actually doesn't generate you more Crouching Tigers than. So yeah, it doesn't actually net you a card.
Yeah, so I don't really want to go too much into this archetype. There are cool things that you can do with it with Art of War, Roar of the Tiger, and Tiger Swipe, and then you can like Mask of the Pouncing Lynx and go get another Tiger Swipe, and there's a lot of shenanigans. It also helps that Roar of the Tiger gives you a Crouching Tiger in your hand, so then you can use the Katsu ability to tutor for a Tiger Swipe, so it's like kind of unstoppable. The problem is if they block Tiger Swipe, your combo doesn't do anything and you only have 3 Tiger Swipes. So I'm not really convinced that this deck is good enough. You also have a lot of cards that just don't do anything if you don't have them in like the perfect hand, and it just seems too fragile, too easy to stop, and just too many. You have to play too many bad cards.
Yeah. One good thing about these cards, mainly Pouncing Key, which is a common 0-cost blue pitch that is a ninja attack action that blocks for 3. It's a combo card, so it works very, very well with the name of the card is not
Flick
coming to
Flack.
me. Flick Flack, yes. It just works well with Flick Flack. So there's more combo cards for Flick Flack now.
I don't know if it matters though. They weren't playing all of them already, so maybe. But I don't
We'll
think
see.
ultimately, I just don't think that this is going to make, even if this archetype is okay and can do some splashy stuff, I don't think it's going to be as good as Fi. And I don't think Fi is going to do this because he can just do less
better
steps.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just move on. Let's move on to Runeblades next. So
Actually,
yeah,
we can also talk about Blazing Uri.
this card's bad. What are you talking about?
No, this card sees play.
This card is just for the mirror, and you get the block for 5.
Yeah, it's like a mini husk. It blocks for 1, but if it's chainlink 4 or higher, it gets +4 defense. You block Lava Burst with this card. It will probably make the mirror more controlled. It doesn't actually make Fi better because it only helps you in the mirror, but it probably makes the mirror, I guess, a bit more consistent.
Does it matter?
I mean, it's like a carrion husk in the mirror.
No, but like, if both players, it's the mirror, so both players get it. So it doesn't actually.
Well, it means it will slow it down a little bit.
It's not going to change. It's just not going to change. It's just like the Salt the Wound turn that you get to use off your pouncing links gets -5, but your opponents also gets -5. So it doesn't actually change anything. It's like both players get just.
Oh, I'm not saying it makes you advantage in the mirror if you both have it. I'm just commenting that like it might change the feel of the mirror a little bit because you have a bit more life. It might feel like slightly slower.
I don't think so. I don't think 5 life matters. It's just each turn cycle you're getting hit for like 17 or 19 sometimes. It's
I mean, yeah, it's still
5 of it, and your opponent still gets to block 5 of it. It's not going to change how swingy that matchup's going to be.
I think we're saying the same things in different words.
I think so too.
You play it, it's an upgrade. Maybe it gives you an extra turn sometimes.
Look, now you don't have to play Blossom of Springs in the mirror. Great.
Or Furnace, yeah.
Oh yeah, or Furnace. Furnace was real bad anyways. It was whatever. We don't need to get into it right now. Okay, so the next class that we want to talk about would be Runeblade. The card you wanted to talk about was Deathly Duet?
Yeah, Deathly Duet.
Okay, so Deathly Duet is a red. For the red, so this one is a rare, so it has red, yellow, and blue. And the red one costs 2, attacks for 4. It is a Runeblade attack action card that blocks for 3. And it says, when Deathly Duet attacks, if an attack action card was pitched to play it, it gains +2. If a non-attack action card was pitched to play it, create 2 rune chant token.
You have to pitch a card to play this. I don't know. You can technically pitch 2 cards and get both effects. I don't think that that's fantastic. It may come up occasionally. But the main mode that I see for Deathly Duet is just that some of the time it's going to be a 6 power attack for 2, which is fine. And sometimes that's Runeblade typed. So that's like a yellow shrill as a red. It's okay. And the other time it's going to be Spellblade Assault if you pitch a non-attack. So I don't know. Mostly more access to Spellblade Assault. Maybe you can play the blue ones and get like more opportunities to make 2 rune chants off your blues, which is pretty good. Not super exciting, but it's okay.
Is that better than any other cards it's playing right now?
I think the blue one might be pretty good, just for that reliable chance to make the extra rune chants.
But what does it replace?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the blue attacks that he plays, but he has some so-so ones. Like, it's probably better than Dread Triptych.
Dread Triptych can make like 3 rune chants. Attacks for 4.
The 3 cost on Dread Triptych's pretty awkward, though. I think this costing 2 is like kind of real.
Okay. I don't know if I buy it, but you know what? That's fair. Let's just move right on. Talk about the next class, which will be Illusionist. What do you want to talk about Illusionist? They didn't really get anything.
Yeah, it's not great. I think we can not say too much about it. There's like a whole bunch of cards that care about ward and auras that have ward, but the problem with ward 1 is that like you leak a damage so often, so you don't have very much control over when these break. So I feel like unless there's like, I don't know, some kind of new hero or archetype that interacts with this differently somehow, I don't see it. There's dust for Dromai that like special dust, one for Vincerakai, one for Necria, and one for
Semi.
Semi.
Mm-hmm.
That makes them not have Phantasm if you make it with this. And they're all 0 cost reds that block 3 and don't have go again. I think they are okay. Maybe. I'm not really sold on them.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why you would play these.
There's like some kind of interesting stuff one of our locals was talking about where you can maybe set up 2 of the dusts and then you play double Vincerakai and they're both real. And if they're kind of low, you go like 6u. And if either of them hits, it does another 3. And they still have to kill these somehow. So that's like potentially kind of scary, but it's just so much setup.
I think what they were saying though is that if the opponent's at 3, if you set up double Vincerakai, they hit for 6 each. So they actually need to commit 2 cards to not die. And then when the second Vincerakai attacks, they need to commit 2 more cards to not die. So they'll never have a hand ever again. And you just lock them out that way. But maybe too much setup.
A little too narrow, I think. If these had go again, maybe they'd be pretty cool against Guardian. Maybe they're cool against Guardian anyways. I don't know. But I feel like because they don't have go again and they're just so clunky to play out, it's real, I don't know. It's not great.
Next class to talk about would be Warrior.
Yeah. So we kind of already talked about Iron Song Pride last week. Maybe it sees
Or
play
2
and
weeks
lets
ago.
you snowball. Or 2 weeks ago, yeah. So kind of same thoughts. It might let you get a counter and kind of snowball things. Doesn't block though, and it's a red and it costs 1, so maybe it's not quite good enough. I don't think it like vastly changes where Dorenthia is in the metagame regardless, but it might be a tool in some matchups. The other card that's maybe we overlooked a little bit was Puncture. This comes in red, yellow, and blue. The red one is a 1 cost warrior attack reaction that blocks 3. And it says target sword or dagger attack gets +3 and piercing 1, which is a new keyword. And it says piercing 1 just says if it's defended by an equipment, it gets +1. Considering they already play stuff like Stroke of Foresight, which is 3 for 1 with like a minor reprise effect, I think Puncture is potentially pretty good. Dory really doesn't like armor, so this is potentially like a 1 for 4 sometimes, and it's a 1 for 3, which is okay, a card that they already play. It's like not a huge upgrade, but I think it is.
I think it's good, yeah. Yeah, this card's good. Like, the way you typically stop one of like Dromai's counters is by blocking with all of your armor and using no cards from your hand because to prevent rupture. And if they do that, if you puncture, then your attack is, this is +4, and that might be just good enough to push it over the top to get the counter. But then again, like if the other player is playing around puncture, then it isn't as effective. Dory has this problem of like once the player playing against Dory knows exactly how your deck works and the exact numbers they need to block to like prevent you out of like to basically lock you out of the game, they get to do that. And none of these cards really solve that problem of like having your opponent outplay you essentially.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like some minor tools. Dory's probably still pretty okay against the aggro decks and probably still pretty miserable into Oldhim.
Okay, and let's just move on to talking about Oldhim Guardian. What did Guardian get?
They got a whole bunch of cards that care about shields and honestly are pretty inefficient.
No, you know what we got? We got Yoji, the Royal Protector. It has 22 starting life.
I think Yoji's clearly a multiplayer character, but just because of the redirect damage to him. So yeah, Yoji's cool. I'm sure people enjoyed in PvE. I don't think Guardian got a lot of tools, and I think it's fine, honestly. Guardian's been in a pretty strong spot for a while with Starvo and Oldhim, And I think it just not getting super strong tools, yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah, Guardian definitely doesn't need more cards. Just please unban that card. Pulse of Eisenloft. Pulse of Eisenloft.
I don't think it's coming back, and I think the metagame's in a slightly better spot for it not being in the format, but I get that you want to play with it.
I wanna deck people out. Actually, I don't want to actually deck people out, but I want to play third cycle Guardian Mirrors again. It's so fun. Yeah, I'm a weird one.
So maybe to wrap things up here, what do you think, Jay? Are there any heroes that you think have the potential to break into tier 1 or that you're particularly excited about? Or do you think the meta is just going to be exactly the way that it's been with some of the other decks shifting around it?
I think it might take... I think Brute got some real upgrades, and I'm pretty excited for Brute. And I think the other hero that I'm like somewhat excited to try would be definitely Wizard, and see if it's actually like good enough to hit that tier 1 territory with the different types of combo decks. And maybe it's just like, it might just be a one shot, but Wizard might be good for like Pro Tour 3. And like just being, if like Wizard's under respected before Pro Tour, and then it might just be a very good deck to bring to Pro Tour 3, or it might be the other way around where Wizard might be the deck to play for Pro Quest 3, but then might be unplayable for Pro Tour 3. But Wizard has that, I think, has that potential to be like, oh, you don't bring AB4, you're dead, kind of thing.
Yeah. And by Wizard, I think you mean Kano, right?
Yeah, I mean Kano, not Iyslander. Iyslander is still gonna do the same thing, and because it gets to play Wounded Bull, it's like it attacks on a slightly different axis. That it's just like that deck is just hard to completely stop, anyways. So it's gonna be good no matter what.
Yeah, and I think Wizard is kind of occupies the same space as, or sorry, Kano occupies the same space as a lot of those kind of like unfair decks in other games where if you have the tools to deal with them in the sideboard plans, you're probably pretty okay. But when people start cutting Arcane Barrier because they're tight on sideboard slots, then and you can bring it to the right event, you can really, really punish people. Because we've seen Wizards. We saw, I think, 2 Wizards in top 8 at Pro Tour New Jersey, and then nothing in Lille, and then back in San Jose Worlds, Hayden was near the top tables for a long time on Kanos and was having quite a good run. Granted, it was like a mixed format, but I think he was 7-1 at the end of day 1. So I think I don't know where his loss was, but he either went 4-1 or 5-0 on Kano. So people have been doing well with this deck. It's just always like a good when people aren't expecting it kind of thing.
Yeah, fair enough. What about you? Is there a deck that you're excited about?
I think I'm excited about Mechanologist. I think Pulse Wave Harpoon's really sweet. I think Nitro Mechanoid is really, really sweet. I kind of want to try that out. I don't know if it's good enough. I'm also excited about Brute for, I think, the same reasons as you. But yeah, it's also kind of nice that both Mech and Brute were, I think, reasonable choices. Like, I think Dash was probably, I think she was the next most represented after those kind of big 4 of Firebriar, Oldham, Iyslander, and Brute won the calling. So they were both decks that were like kind of in the metagame, but not quite there. And so I think strong upgrades to decks that were already kind of close is always interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those really kind of seem like the major players. I think Ranger will continue to be this kind of anti-aggro deck that can't really deal with Guardians, and probably overall is a little bit of a weaker choice, unfortunately.
Okay, I think that's basically everything I wanted to talk about in Dynasty.
We can wrap up here for today. As always, thank you for listening. And this week, let us know in the comments what you are most excited for in Dynasty. Do you agree with our takes? Is there anything we might have overlooked that you're looking forward to? We'd love to hear your thoughts about the new set and what you're excited about there. If you want to hear more from Jay or myself, you can follow me on Twitter at Yuki Bender, or you can follow Jay at UedaJ on Twitter. You can also email us at onthebauble@gmail.com. I could just kind of end it. Is that an okay spot to end? Should I keep going?
No, that's good. That's good. We can because we have like the little outro music thing. We can just put the outro music right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Then, do you want to do a sign off today, or is there anything to talk about? It's pretty long already. Okay, I want to stop this recording.